Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Bridget Phillipson are liars. In my opinion, liars. In my opinion, you might think differently, that's fine. But in my opinion, they're liars. And I feel qualified to say that. I feel absolutely qualified to say that because when I look at facts and figures in front of me in black and white about things that they've said and things that they've done, there's a massive gap in the middle. Now, I'm sure Keir Starmer would argue, because, he's good at arguing. He would say, well, I didn't know, I didn't have the facts, or no, that's not true. And he will try and spin the facts or just not answer the question. I mean, he just doesn't answer the question at all, does he? Jonathan Reynolds, I thought, did a really good job of that this morning on the radio when he was trying to defend the fishing policy. But I think they're liars. I think they know. I think a liar for me is when you know the truth and you deliver a falsehood. So in terms of education, we were told, the whole nation was told, and regardless of where your child was, if you have children, whether it was in state education or independent education, you were still given the same facts. And for those of you that don't have children in education, and I can understand why you might go, oh, she's talking about education again. Well, bear with me, because this doesn't just affect those people that have kids or our grandparents. This affects the entire society in this country. Because if these people at the top of the tree can behave like this to children, one of the most vulnerable sectors of society, what can they do to the rest of us? Well, we know what they can do. We know what they're capable of, but I think they're actually far more dangerous than even I've given them credit for. So back in the day, the manifesto was we were going to add VAT onto education. It was going to provide 6,500 teachers in the state sector, and it was going to raise £1.8 billion. They were the headlines. Now, if you're in the state sector, that's a win, isn't it? That's yay, we want that. And as 94% of parents are in the state sector, then that is a win. And I can understand why they may have gone, oh, for goodness sake, just stop whining and pay the money. I get that. If you don't go too deep into the story, then it seems like a plausible argument. If you, of course, take the first layer of that story and just with the basics, and this was when Bridget Phillipson was talking about broad shoulders and schools being able to absorb the costs. So if we just deal with that basic first layer, Bridget Phillipson said only 3,000 people in the independent sector would be affected by this, and that would make no difference to the policy. So it's nearly a year in before we've had the figures. Remember, Bridget Phillipson said 3,000. The figures are 13,000. Now, Rachel Reeves, you don't need to reach for your calculator. I will do that one for you. It's quadrupled. So Bridget said 3,000, it's 13,000. Now, why is this a lie? This is a lie because A, she knew, and we knew this when the court case happened in April. We were told the actual real figures that they were working with behind the scenes, not the figures that they were sharing with you. So we'd got two sets of figures. We'd got the Bridget Phillipson, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer set of figures, and the ones that they wanted us to know. Then we'd got the actual true ones. Rachel Reeves, Bridget Phillipson and Keir Starmer were explicitly told that 56,000 children would move in the first 2 years. And they told you a lie. They told you it would be around 3,000 in the first year. And when Bridget was pressed on this, she said, I don't accept that. Okay, so she absolutely direct denied it, as did Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves kept telling you all this money it was going to raise and it was going to go to teachers. Well, then we go to the next layer where not only has it not gone to the teachers, they can't even recruit the number of teachers that they need to regardless of VAT. They can't even recruit and maintain them. So they've already failed at the first hurdle. So even if they did have that money, they wouldn't be able to recruit the teachers because the teachers don't want to come into the profession. So that was the next lie. But Rachel wasn't having it. And then she got told that you can't hypothecate this tax. And what that means is you can't say that the tax coming from VAT on education is going to go directly into education. It's not. It's just going into the big pot, which can be spent on anything she likes. We'd like to think it would go to education, but she can't ring fence it. So then she sort of got round it with other spurious word salads. And then when it was the court case and it was finally admitted in court that this would not raise the money that it said it was, because in fact the 10% threshold of children moving will be met, so it was going to raise net zero, but it was also going to cause untold harm onto the state and special educational needs sector. And when that came out, they went, oh, well, we'll just ignore that report, even though it's like one of our kind of reports that we've referred to for the whole time. We'll ignore that. So they lied. They covered it up. They span it. You can call it which way you like. It was there for all to see. They chose not to listen to it, and they chose to plough ahead. So now, despite facing all manner of abuse from Bridget Phillipson in terms of the private parent lobbyists and their crying wolf, that was another one, crying wolf at the amount of children that are leaving. Who's crying wolf now, Bridget? We told you it would be more than that. You've been advised every step of the way, but your sheer arrogance, single-mindedness and cruelty has meant that you've ignored it. So now you've got to eat your words. Chew them up, spend a long time chewing that cud, my love, and swallow them. Because 13,000 children have left the sector. Now, where do you think they've gone? That's right. They've gone into the underfunded sector that is state. Now, a state school, the Commonwealth School in Swindon, has just sent a letter to its parents telling them about the cuts it's having to make. We have now reached a point where it's the straw that broke the camel's back, said headmaster Mr. Drew. So 27 courses that they ran for Key Stage 4 will now be 24 courses. 94 teachers will go down to 90. That's in 1 year. And of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's not to say that those cuts will stay that way. That's just where they're starting. And they're not the only school. This is nationwide. Schools across the country are cutting funding. Now, Bridget Phillipson's given them a pay rise, but they've got to pay it from their own existing budgets. But they don't have an existing budget to pay it from. There's nothing left for them to cut. So they can't pay themselves and they can't meet the demands of their children already without the children coming in from from private education. Now, at the beginning of this, when parents were saying it's just going to flood the state system, there was not an awful lot coming back from the state system side because, understandably, they were like, no, it's not. Bridget Phillipson tells it's not going to happen. She says they're all rich and they can afford it. Oh, for goodness sake, just shut up, pay your fees and crack on. It's not going to affect us. Fast forward to today, it's really affecting us. We've got 35, 40 kids in a class. We're down on teachers. We're down on classrooms. We're down on curriculum. We're down on subjects. We're down on every conceivable thing that we could be on. State education is on life support. But joining it now is the sector that was propping it up before, which is the independent sector. But that's also in a coma. So we don't know which way that's going to come out, whether that's going to have to go on life support or if it's just going to limp along in absolute agony for the next few years until it finally falls over. We don't know how that's going to go. All the projections are telling us is going to go in exactly the same way as state. So we've killed 2 education systems. There isn't a third. There isn't a backup. And this was done knowingly. Keir Starmer knew it. Rachel Reeves knew it. Bridget Phillipson knew it. And they still went on. And what was their point? Was it to rise the standards in state education, or was it to kill independent education? Because you can't have both. If you're going to kill independent education, you're going to kill state education. If you're going to raise the standards in state education, you need independent education to help you do that, but not by taxing the living shit out of it, but by working with it, keeping the other one afloat. They were told it explicitly. Rachel Reeves was told that the worst possible time to implement this tax would be January 2025. She was told this would have the worst impact on children, and she did it. So to my original point, which is whether you are affected by the education system or not, you are affected by a government that will knowingly, callously, coldly and cruelly implement policies that they know will harm the sector it affects. There is no way to dress that up. I could sit and have this conversation with Rachel, Bridget and Keir. I would love to have this conversation with Rachel, Bridget and Keir. I would say those words. I would not give up. I would keep asking them about it. Why did you do it? Why didn't you listen? Where are your workings out? Where are your risk assessments? Where is any of the theory behind this ill thought out policy? Why didn't you speak to educational experts? Why didn't you look at all the countries that had tried to do this and given up before? Why didn't you look at other models and see how they work? Why didn't you listen to the children? Why didn't you listen to the parents? Why didn't you listen to the loud screams saying, stop, it won't work? Because now what's going to happen? How are they going to get out of this? Well, they're sure as hell not going to turn around and go, oh, I'm really sorry I got that wrong. Are they? I mean, the best we can hope for is that Phillipson gets fired. But then who we're going to get instead of her, God only knows. She's already started a smear campaign against the first leader. So let's see who's going to go. But what are we going to do? How are we going to undo this? Because we've gone past the point of return. As the head teacher said from Commonweal School, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not about to break the camel's back, it's broken it. In Wales, 19 independent schools are slated to close. That's 6,500 children going into the state sector that can't cope with the children it's got. We've taught 6,500 is, I think, going to be the defining number in this whole policy, because that's how many teachers were supposed to be coming into the system, which equated to half a teacher per school. We've now got 6,500 children coming out of a system in Wales alone and going into the state system. And some idiot decided that was a good idea. The idiot is not the parent school lobbyists crying wolf. It's Bridget Phillipson, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. And they look more stupid than you could imagine because they were told, they carried on and they lied. And that's why I hate liars. And that's why I hate this government, because it's not even just a little fudge. It's not even just a, oh, yeah, okay, that didn't go so well, did it? But I'll do something right to rectify it and I'll apologise later down the line. It's not that. It's calculated, malicious, harmful intent. And I think Keir Starmer would have a real struggle defending that in court.